And welcome to the Mailbox, where we look at some of the comments that have appeared on the channel from the last week. And this week we've got some lore questions. We've got some questions in terms of the future direction of Blizzard as well. But I've also got some really important news about this and the channel as well in the second half. So like I say, it's going to be in two parts, this video. The first part is just going through the questions as normal, but fewer of them this week. And then I need to talk about the future of the channel and my place in the game. Now, I'm going to put that in the second half. I'm going to put a timestamp to it in the description below in case you just want to go for that. So first of all, what we normally do at the start is the where's the mailbox. We're going to do that a little bit differently for reasons that will become apparent later on the video as well. So that's where it was last week, but we're not going to go through the winners or where it was just at the moment. Well, we are go through where it was, but not in the normal style with a new one or anything there really. It was Fellfire Hill. It's in Ashenvale, and it is the site, the scorch marks there. That's the site where Grom killed Manaroth, and then in return, just out of pure spite, Manaroth killed Grom. You know, so a very major site in terms of the Warcraft 3 lore. Yeah, so that's where that was. But let's get on to some just normal questions first, because it's going to be a bit weird, this one. So the first one says, as much as I like Brunsamdi and I'm going to Leven Alliance just for Flynn, yes, absolutely. Says, I really like Nathanos. People say he's mean and doesn't try to be our friend. Why should he? Why do people get butthurt at him giving us orders and making some jokes about us being the speaker of the Horde, the hero, the champion? I enjoy what he does that I don't take as insults, really. I see him as very epic, and it's tragic he died protecting Silvermoon, even if only because he liked Sylvanas. He proved himself worthy, and yet the elves never really thanked him, and now he sees his love become a possibly beyond help crazed monster, and he just follows her lead. I wouldn't like to see how that ends. He's kind of like Nazgrim to me, really. Now, my views of Nathanos, I have to say, did change somewhat with the Before the Storm novel. But you've got to bear in mind, I mean, although technically, it's very difficult for me to say now, but technically I'm a Horde character. My Paladin is a Horde character. And in quite a lot of the expansions, at some point or another, I have leveled as Horde through it, because I've flitted back and forth between Alliance and Horde for some time now, just in terms of getting into raiding guilds. Obviously don't need to do that anymore. But my view of Nathanos has always been that he's just slavishly loyal to Sylvanas and a complete hardass, and he will complete her tasks as efficiently as possible, and that's not necessarily as nicely as possible. However, when I read the Before the Storm novel, I have to confess to being very surprised, because it's quite clear to me that Nathanos doesn't think himself above the Forsaken in the same way that Sylvanas clearly was in that novel. You know, he was really trying to come to an accord between the Forsaken, for whom he was treating with the greatest respect, you know, in Undercity. He really did seem like a loyal servant of them, you know, trying to come to some accord between them and what Sylvanas wants, because he's also loyal to her. I thought that was actually quite touching, the fact that he didn't go in there very aggressive with them. You know, at the end of the day, they're formed an organisation with the Desolate Council that's not intended to usurp Sylvanas, but she's seeing it as that, and he could easily have just gone in going, oh, this is no good. But he didn't, you know, there was a massive amount of sympathy there. So he obviously is very, very sympathetic to his own people. He's just a complete arsehole to everyone else. So yeah, there's certainly some sympathy there. I just don't think it comes across really in the game very much. Unless, again, like I say, because of flitting between the Horde and Alliance, there's certain little subtle quests that I've missed out on. Because, you know, the way it's generally been, when I have leveled on the Horde, it's just to level on the Horde. You know, there's sometimes little side quests I might not do. Whereas when I was Alliance, because I was Alliance for much longer, over time you eventually go around and do these quests at any rate, and you get a much fuller picture. So it could be a bit of that. But I haven't really seen much evidence of that sympathy in the game, only in a novel, really. Which is a shame. I mean, I've said before that, you know, when they put things in, you expect them to expand on things in the novel, but it's a bit of a shame that the novels are not separate stories to win the game because they're sort of running parallel, but separate. They are separate in a way, rather than just an expanded version of what's happening in the game. And then you can miss out on things like this, of course. Next one, another little character. It says, I think you're right about Medivh, but seeing how they take every opportunity to reuse characters, Illidan comes to mind. You could list off virtually every character. We may see more of him in the future. Be interested to see how they retcon explain it. If they brought him back, I'm not sure it would. I mean, the point I was trying to make is at the end of Warcraft 3, he said he was going to disappear into the Age of Legend or something like that. This was... I say at the end of Warcraft 3. It wasn't really the end of Warcraft 3, was it? It was the end of the first part of Warcraft 3. It was where they'd killed Archimonde, wasn't it? And then he says, right, I've done my job, off ski. So, I mean, he could come back. He's already come back from the dead. I mean, he had his heart stabbed and his head chopped off, didn't he? Lothar chopped his head off and Khadgar stabbed him in the heart. That didn't stop him coming back for Warcraft 3, did it? So, yeah. But in terms of it being interesting how they retcon explain it, I don't think it will be interesting. I think they'll just bring him back like they bring everyone back. If they even attempt to explain it, they'll just say, he was always keeping an eye on us, which they could reasonably do, I suppose. He was always keeping an eye on us, and now it's time to come and sort us out again. At the same time, I'm not really sure, because the Burning Legion has been done with properly. I mean, obviously, it could come back at some point, but it has been sort of finished for now. And if the Old Gods threat is dealt with this expansion, there wouldn't really be any need for him to come back, even though they will still face dangers, no doubt. But yeah, they easily could. They could. I mean, it's like the guides in the game, isn't it? So we had, for Missa Pandaria, we had Rathian as our guide, and then they did Warlords of Draenor, and then it was Khadgar as our guide, and then the same in Legion, he was still our guide then. Then in Battle for Azeroth, there isn't like one cross-faction guide, so they've sort of moved away from that a little bit. We've had, there's several ones you could say are adopting that role for both Horde and Alliance, but maybe in a future one they decide to go for the guide again. And Medivh again has got that cross-faction appeal if they ever decide to go down that road again. So they could easily bring him back for that, or as I say, Rathian, because that's much more likely. In fact, I think all but confirmed, isn't it? Next one, right, so this is to do with Blizzard again. So it says, today I uninstalled WoW after I quit early on in BFA. After the raids had released, I've been subbed to WoW for 7 years. With that, let's work this out. Hold on. So you've been playing for the whole of Legion, the whole of WoD, the whole of MoP. So you started late Cataclysm, I guess? Was that all right? Anyway, without a month missed, it truly breaks my heart to see Activision succumb in Blizzard like this. I had never in my mind expected to quit WoW this soon after what my favourite expansion, Legion, had offered me. I absolutely hate money and greed and cannot simply continue supporting a company that does things like Blizzard Activision does now. What I would say to that, and I've sort of said this before, I don't believe that the way Blizzard conduct things now, or at least from recently, has been because of the influence of Activision. I know a lot of people, and it comes back to this, people think about how Blizzard used to be, and then, they see obviously Activision, they think, oh, it must be Activision that's turned them astray. It's a bit like a parent whose kid does something really bad, and they just think, oh, well, it must be their friends leading them astray. They can't believe it of their little darling. But I've said it before, I just believe, and it's a belief, I can't know this, but I've got something, to say that is a bit more credible. I just think it is, as the company has grown and it's got further, the bosses of the company, the chief executives, or the executives in general, have got further and further away from the day-to-day games development, because that's what they used to be and are not anymore. Then they've just become more and more hardened businessmen and women. And then I saw a tweet from someone who's a games developer who used to be working on World of Warcraft years ago now, one of those guys who worked on it years ago. And he was describing how one time he was told to basically make find where you can cut a load of staff, basically. And he was making the view, well, we don't really have slack in that. You're just making people redundant for the sake of it. And we're going to be producing a poorer quality product. And he was told, allegedly, we've only got this one person's word for it, but it rings true for me. He was told, look, we're a grown-up company now, and we need to do these things. Blizzard have had this attitude themselves. They've developed it themselves. This isn't Activision having come in and told them the way to do things. They may now be doing that a bit more. I totally believe that from this point on, they may be doing that. And when I say they, you've got to remember it's not like Blizzard are owned by Activision. They're a merged company, but obviously Activision is the larger part of it, the greatest share of the votes on everything and all the rest of it. But I can believe that Activision are sort of controlling it a great deal more. But what's led us up to this has been, I guarantee, 100% Blizzard. They've just had this attitude. It's when you're no longer a games developer and you're now just a businessman or a businesswoman. Your perception is going to change. Your view of things is going to change, and you'll still probably delude yourself. You'll still probably try and convince yourself that you're still producing a great product because there's loads of people playing it. And you'll excuse all sorts of things, declining numbers. Well, it's an old game, you expect this. There are all sorts of ready excuses, but ultimately, what they're after is making the most generic product because it's safe. It's a bit like Hollywood writers not really wanting to come up with unique screenplays or not wanting to invest in unique screenplays because tried and tested. This formula works. We'll do this formula. It's unfortunate, but I think people it's just a ready excuse to blame Activision as a scapegoat when it's Blizzard. Blizzard have become this company. So on to the job losses again. Says, I get it. I feel bad. People have lost their job, but the company is a company. It's there to make money. It's going to work on making money, not employing the most number of people as possible. They made a number of bad calls on this update, but I don't think people would care as much if BFA was as popular as Legion. Right, so here we go. If we were talking, which in some cases we are, and this is again where people seem to go wrong, if we're talking about people who are literally got nothing to do in the company, because of projects and like Budgie going, for example, that meant there's a load of Activision Blizzard employees, nothing to do. Yes, you have to accept that if you can't use them for a new project, because at the same time, I've seen companies before get rid of some people, make some people redundant, and then launch a new project like immediately and advertise for, and some of those have got those jobs. Like, that's a bit mad. Why did you go through all the messing about it? Apart from anything else, surely it costs you more. No, that's not what this is. Some people have lost their jobs due to that. You can't argue with that because, as you say, it's a company. And yes, it's not there to employ as many people as possible. It's not a cooperative. It's a limited company. Great. Well, it's not great, but you know what I mean. That I don't argue with that. Like, I didn't argue with all those job losses that happened some years ago because that was just due to, sorry, there isn't a job for you. But what's happened a lot in this particular case, we should be concerned about because they're removing people, the loss of which means that the product will be less good. So some of those people are going because accountants can see the potential for a little bit of extra money, working on assumptions that we're still going to carry on buying their products at the same rate as we are now. But the product is going to be poorer quality. So by supporting it, it's not just about the people who've lost those jobs. It's about the fact that we're going to get a poorer quality product as a result of it. Because they've got rid of people who were doing a good job. So that's the issue. That's why I have an issue with it. It wasn't with, the fact that any people have been made redundant. It's the sheer number of them and the sheer number of them that are working on projects that they're still committed to and in roles that are actually very important and doing a credible job in those roles as well. That's my issue with it. The next one says, it's not very long until we get the announcement that BlizzCon 2019 is cancelled or renamed to Vision 2019 and it's consolidated all Activision's franchises into one convention. I'm not sure about that, actually. BlizzCon obviously has a big brand name, attracts a lot of people, makes a load of money. Why would they? But what could easily happen is, in the interests of updating technologies, What they might do for future BlizzCons is make you download your ticket onto your phone so that when you go in, you have to produce your phone. That way, they don't even have to ask the question if you have phones or not. They'll know because it's the only way you got in. But that's the only change I see coming for BlizzCon. But no, the actual thing itself is a huge event. It sells itself. They're not. You don't rebrand when your existing product's doing really well. You only ever rebrand when it's doing disappointingly. And that then potentially brings me on to the next point. Because in terms of esports, because they've been cutting back on the old esports, says I think Activision are probably consolidating departments across the company as a whole and more closely integrating Activision, Blizzard and King's efforts in these areas. Same goes for influencer outreach. Eliminating duplicate and underperforming positions would certainly explain some, but by no means all, of the job losses. And just in terms of the apparent withdrawal from esports in general, yes, it could. It could well be that they want to consolidate it as one large thing. And this is why when I go back to the fact that Blizzard, I think, where they're at now is down to them. I can believe that some of it, when I've said this before, in terms of when they were trying to do annual expansions, I can believe that was some influence from elsewhere. But in terms of the decisions they've made, that's all Blizzard. But now it might well be that there's less autonomy amongst those, as you say, those three individual parts of the Activision Blizzard company, and that they are wanting to centralize certain things because, that can work more efficiently. Like you say, if you've got a department in each of those three separate sort of companies, and they can be consolidated into one department that can work in a more coordinated manner, then of course, yes, you do that. Yeah, I get that. But it also comes back into the brand thing. Blizzard itself, I hesitate to say is still a byword for quality, but it still has a good reputation. It's been much tarnished, but I think it still has a good reputation. And if they do this, you have to worry about, are they diminishing their own influence? Is this just what is seen by an accountant as an efficiency saving without any consideration for brand awareness and how powerful that can be? I don't know. It's not like Blizzard are bigger than Activision, of course not. It's the other way around. But again, you might get people, like the same people who blame Activision for Blizzard's woes, who don't like Activision but do like Blizzard still. And merging them together can sort of potentially put some of those people off. I don't know. I'm not really into esports. I have like a curse, an inquisitive look at it sometimes. And I watch like for some reason, I enjoy watching StarCraft, like at BlizzCon, things like that. Even though I've never played it because I don't like sci-fi games. But I like watching it somehow. Not sure why. But I don't like watching people play World of Warcraft. Weird. But yeah, that's pretty much the only time I ever watch any. So I don't really know about the world of esports. Other than being curious that the Blizzard seem to be pulling away from it. When it's clearly going to be a growth industry. Anyway, right. Last little one before we get on to the other things. Yeah, this is from Twitter. All I'm going to suggest here is, if you're going to try and gnome me, and this bloody thing this gnome video has been doing the rounds like the old Rick rolling from ages ago. At least try and disguise it. A couple of people have caught me out by trying to disguise it. We all know the one about, the video about, Discord say they're shutting down, which I didn't really believe, but I clicked on it anyway. And of course got gnomed. So I've not fallen for that since. And I'm certainly not going to fall for it when you're not even bothering to disguise what it is. So a little bit of advice there. I ain't clicking on things like that. Right then. So, second part of the video, which is going to be a little bit of story time, and eventually I'll come to a point. So I had this little query here. It says, it's been a while since your last Lotro vid and all the other non-WoW content as well. Have you decided to change the channel Warcraft only? Really curious. There's no decision. Like the channel for me, I'll go through story time of what it is, but settle in here, get a mug of Horlicks or something. So where it started years and years ago was just somewhere to upload my kill videos for Friends and Guildies because I used to upload them to somewhere else and I can't remember where it was. But they don't keep, it wasn't like a permanent thing. YouTube was not very big when World of Warcraft, in fact, was it even out? I don't even know when YouTube came out. But it certainly wasn't big in the way that it is now. And then what happened, early Wrath, I quit the game and then I came back. And then all of a sudden, when I came back, YouTube was the place to put these things. I can't remember where I put the other one. So I lost a load of videos because I, also changed computers several times and didn't always copy stuff across. A load of kill videos from like TBC and stuff that I've lost since. Cool, got some still on the channel. So yeah, so I did it for kill videos. Then what happened? During WOD, I started to notice that there weren't any sensible advice or guides for rep paladins on YouTube. And even websites was hit and miss because some of them give you terrible advice and some of them wouldn't. And so I just decided to do some stuff with rep paladins in terms of guides, which I can barely seem to, stand to watch now. They were so awful, but yeah, people quite like them. So I did a bit of that, and then I thought to myself, this was like summer 2015. I thought, yeah, people seem to like these, and I had done videos before that were not just for Friends and Guildies, but put out there that seemed to do quite well. But I'd never really thought, oh, I could do this. So then what I decided to do was round about August, when I had time off, summer holiday, stuff like that, I thought I'll do some stuff. I'll throw some stuff out just to test the water, see what it's like. And it seemed to do quite well. So mid-September 2015, I thought, do you know what? I'll commit to, I'll say I'm doing a channel now. So I did. And I started just doing, regular World of Warcraft videos, like, several videos every week on a variety of things, not just rep paladins now, discussions as well as guides and just raiding guides in general. And over 2000, and I was very bad at the old YouTube thing, and sometimes I would read some advice on it and then not follow it because, I never really treated it as something deliberately to grow. I wanted it to grow, of course, but I also wanted, it was an interest for me, and I didn't want to do a load of, if you really want to grow a channel, you've got to put a lot of work into it behind the scenes and things like that. And it's like, it's not really a hobby then, is it? And of course, I was spending a lot of my time doing the actual raiding, which was my main source material. So then over 2016, eventually, in the second half, it actually did very well. I was gaining about 1,000 subscribers a month from about July. This was in the lead up to Legion, and it continued for the end of the year. Then 2017 didn't really, it still was growing, but it was growing at a much slower rate. Then there was one particular blip when I did a video that was just hideously popular for mine anyway, and I got loads of new subscribers. But then, it was growing, but not very much. Then 2018, it really just stopped. The growth just stopped, eking upwards, but really just. And then, of course, at the end of the first half of 2018, at work, I was looking at the way things were going to go. So I work in a sixth form college, and they're not very well funded at all. In fact, the government have been squeezing the funding. But we still have to offer a service. So the only way to do it, realistically, is each individual person has to do more than is reasonably expected. So without me even having someone telling me, by the way, you're going to be working twice as hard next year, I could just see how it was going and thought to myself, I'm going to be working twice as hard next year. There's some tough times coming. And, because we've had people leave and not be replaced because there isn't the money to do it. So but rather than try and make people redundant, which ordinarily would have happened, they went for the natural wastage route, but that means there's more for the rest of us. So I had to make the decision to quit raiding. Now, at the time, there were a few things that made it an easier pill to swallow. There was the fact that I was looking at the raiding thing anyway. So from the heady days when I was competing at quite a high level, those days I would accept them were completely gone now. I was not able to get into a guild at a very high level. The consequence of that is, although I try and keep myself in check when people are trying their best, and it's not like as a rep paladin I felt I was always bringing a lot as well. Nonetheless, it was frustrating when you take much longer on a boss than it should really take. And, you know, and that's the nature of those sort of guilds I was in. Very nice people, you know, very social, very enjoyable being in, but at the same time, a little bit frustrating because I used to be in a nice cycle of, you know, you progress, you kill the bosses, and then you've got a nice lead in to the next tier opening up. So you can relax a bit then, catch your breath. That wasn't happening. That wasn't happening. Spending so long on progress that you were only just doing it in time, if that, straight into the next one, no breather. So that takes even more. So raiding was now taking even longer, and then in Legion as well, because you also had all the artifact power to grind at various points during it. That was taking even more time. There was time being spent in the game outside of raid time. So there was certainly an awful lot of things pulling me away from raiding anyway, but I'd have still carried on doing it because I still loved raiding. But when the work thing came out, I thought, I can't do it. It's not a case of I don't want to do it anymore. I just can't. Physically can't. And that's not a situation that is going to change. Although there's going to be times over the year when it gets a bit easier. For example, in 6 weeks' time, it's going to get a little bit less hectic. So basically the way it's going to be is March is still going to be fairly hectic. I'm still going to be very busy in March. April's going to calm down a little bit. May is going to also calm down a little bit more. June and July are going to be actually pretty calm. And then the rest of July and August, I'm off anyway. So there's certain times of the year when it'll be fine, but then it'll go ramp back up again. It's not going to stop until I win the lottery. It's not going to stop. So the raiding is a non-starter. So I thought, well, okay. There was a time when if I stopped raiding, I would just quit the game. But then I thought to myself, do you know what? There's, you know, for casuals, I don't think the game's all that bad anymore. I think it's quite decent. But unfortunately, with BFA, I think it made it worse for the casual player in my situation. For example, if I just decided to quit, like early Legion, say, I'd been in a raiding guild still as a social. So when the new raid came out, I'd have gone along to that just to make up the numbers to generate more loot. You know, so they can do 30-man normal and heroic. And I'd be there and I'd be able to experience it, get my ahead of the curve, which would mean if I was mad enough to get into pugs, be able to do pugs, out raids, things like that, use a few coins, get a bit of stuff as well. And that probably would have worked out all right. Also, and I'm glad they changed this, by the way. This was not a good feature. I'm not glad in terms of the changes to raiding, but in terms of the Mythic Plus, early on, I'd have been getting into loads of Mythic Plus as well, because it was in people's interest to get as many keys as possible and to do them even at a lower level to get the artifact power. That is again, so now as a casual, I have no value in Mythic Plus or a raid other than amongst people of my same level, and I don't want to pug. So I was finding, and when my little group where we were at least doing the Mythic Pluses sort of stopped doing that, then all of a sudden there was nothing. There's nothing now in WoW for me to play. And yes, I could sort this out by, you know, trying to get into a pug or something like that. But I don't want to do that. And also, you know, in terms of trying to find a guild, I actually did early on try to find a guild that would do the same sort of things I wanted to do. It proved elusive. And I could try again, but that's just me moving across and maybe not enjoying it there or whatever. And I'm just thinking to myself, at the moment, I have no reason to play WoW. I am literally spending more time playing World of Warcraft on the PTR than I am live. I haven't logged onto my Paladin for a while. Actually, I may have logged onto my Paladin earlier this week for something, but not, I don't know. Did I? Can't remember. So mostly when I've been logging onto live, it's with this character behind me. No. I can't work out left from right behind. There we go. God. Reverse everything, you idiot. Just to do where's the mailbox. So what's happened is inevitably, so as I say, 2018 was basically no growth anyway. And then, and obviously in the second half, the raiding type stuff is just completely absent from the channel. In fact, it's quite weird because I decided to separate out the channel. Because I was putting more stuff, as you say there, I was doing Lord of the Rings online stuff, and I was doing Warhammer stuff and stuff like that, and then I separated out the Warhammer to a different channel because I thought it was going to take away from each other. I now regret that immensely, because what's happening now is the raiding stuff has gone from the World of Warcraft element, and obviously then So all I'm really doing is discussing stuff, which is still interesting to me. I still enjoy doing that. But when it comes down to it, on a week-to-week basis, there isn't always a lot to discuss other than going over new ground. And I just thought this week has been half term. So this is the time it's like, right, there's some WoW videos I'd intended to do. Let's get those done. And you'll notice I haven't done them. The last video to come out was the Azeroth review. And the video before that was the Mailbox. So in the last week, there's been 2 videos on this channel. And it just seemed to me that although there's still a few videos I could do with World of Warcraft, I'm just looking at it. I used to have a huge long list of videos and I could never get through them all. I could only ever do so many. There were some that would just end up being, they'd stay on the list while they might be relevant and then they'd have to be abandoned. I don't have such a list anymore. So I've been thinking to myself, I'm not playing World of Warcraft. Let's be honest about that. I am not really playing World of Warcraft. And I'm not doing anything sensible in it at all. I can't come back to raiding. Work honestly really doesn't allow it. I've had to find hobbies that allow me to play it on a much more casual basis. And of course, as you know, I've been playing more Warhammer, been really getting into that as well. And because that allows me, on a particular week, I can try and ask for a game at the gaming club, maybe even have 2 games in a particular week. And then if I'm really busy, well, I won't go. I won't have any games because it's on an ad hoc basis. Raiding, you have to stick to certain times, and then there's all the stuff to do outside it. And it's not because, this is not an attack on what World of Warcraft has become. There has, for years, if ever I'd have stopped raiding, I would have quit the game. The fact that I didn't actually is testament to the fact that I thought, that they have improved the casual experience. It's just that it's not enjoyable enough for me. I'm interested in the story, but I don't have to play much of the game to do that. And generally speaking, I'm playing most of that through on the PTR anyway. So I'm not like cancelling subscriptions to World of Warcraft, but what I am going to be doing is just acknowledging the fact that I'm not really going to be playing it very much. I have thought about maybe as an experiment just levelling up some more characters. I might level up that rogue, for example. I've not levelled that up, but that's at least an Alliance character then, because I haven't levelled up Alliance in BFA since the Alpha and Beta. And so, I could do that. And but in terms of, stuff for the channel, I'm just thinking, so at the moment, I mean, what's really kept it going, let's be honest, what's really kept it going is the patrons. There's still quite a lot of patrons that are still supporting it. And I'm going to do a separate video just for Patreon, just to explain the situation there. Because I'd have expected, as it's declined, for those people to decline as well. And they haven't, and I don't really know why. So I've been sort of trying to keep it going for them. But it's just, I'll tell you what it feels like. It feels like trying to be a journalist now. It's like I'm looking for things to try and talk about. And I'll find things. I go, yeah, I could do a video on that. But then I think to myself, but should I? Just because I could, should I? And as some of you may also know, I've got other channels as well. And in particular, one of them at the moment is doing quite well. It may not in the future. I've got a political channel, which I have now been able to link to this channel. So you can actually see on the homepage links to those channels for people that ask about them. And, obviously I'm doing a video for that every single day. And, in terms of the decline of this, yeah, if I did a video for this every single day, it may not have declined as it is. YouTube would be a lot happier with it. But I can't think of one to do every single day without forcing the issue. And at the moment, I'm struggling to think of any to do without forcing the issue. So basically, this is going to have been the last Mailbox. That's not to say that I'm just going to do the Azeroth review for now, but I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I do want to try and replace this, but with something else, for which, comments could come in. I don't want to keep the channel alive if it's not really alive. But at the same time, if there are still interests I have, not only in this game, it's not going to be regular, but also other PC games. But anyway, so the Azeroth review, I would still intend to keep going and maybe combine this with that. So when people have got comments on certain things, introduce those into the Azeroth review. And while that keeps going, because it also has to be said, I mean, since December, the end of basically Christmas, the channel has been in clear decline. The number of subscribers is dropping all the time. And the number of views is dropping. The average number of views is dropping all the time. Obviously, part of that is going to be that YouTube are going, oh, you're only doing like 2 or 3 videos a week. Yeah, we're not going to promote that as much. That would be part of it, but also just part of the fact that a lot of the stuff, the value that people are getting from the channel doesn't exist anymore in terms of guides and stuff like that. Because even though there are still some guides I could do, I now feel a bit of a fraud for doing them because I'm just researching stuff, not experiencing it, not being able to give any personal little advice that makes it my own guide, you know what I mean? So I think I even need to abandon that. And so yeah, so the Azeroth review, but the Azeroth review itself has massively declined. There's about 50% of the people tuning in to see that, and that happened very suddenly. It was like 1 week it was 120 odd at any one time there. Now it's like 60 odd. And that happened very suddenly this year. So, and obviously that relies upon people, you know, contributing on there, because you know. But if it keeps going, then I'm because I like that sort of stuff. I love that. That's not forced at all, doing something like that. So then I was thinking, well, maybe I should only just stick to live interaction stuff. So maybe what I need to do is to have a session each week, which is almost certainly going to have to be on a Sunday, where, you know, I could play a particular game. It may be World of Warcraft, it may not be, maybe something else, and just basically stream gaming and get some discussions going on certain topics there. And then as and when there is something I want to talk about, that I'm absolutely bursting to talk about, I'd do a video on that. And if the channel just declines to the point where it doesn't even seem worth doing that, then I'll just let it go. But if that is something that still seems worthwhile to people, then keep it going. But at the moment, like, I mean, you know, the mailbox this week was like 6 questions because, of course, I haven't really done any other videos. I did the mailbox last week and I've done the Azeroth review this week, and that's it. Because everything else would seem forced. And I don't really want to force stuff on here when, if you think about other things on my time, if I do that, I am taking away from content that I do on another channel, actually playing a game, or getting, you know, doing Warhammer stuff, you know, so it's, or whatever else. It's, and then obviously nothing can take away from work. As I say, one of the main reasons I had to cut back from raiding is because work is so much, and that's, you know, there ever present again. And at certain times of the year, it's harder than others. So there'll be some times of the year it would be slack when I probably could easily do loads of videos on the channel because work's calmed down at the end of the academic year over summer. But then, you know, it'll go to being harsh again, and YouTube isn't going to really fancy, you know, someone that at certain times does a few videos a week and at certain times does like none. So that's the long-winded situation there. It is disappointing, but at the end of the day, I'm not really feeling it for World of Warcraft as much as I did. There's nothing for me to do on my main character other than, I mean, there's content that come out of this patch that I still haven't done. I actually still haven't, on live, done the choosing between Garrosh and Sylvanas. I did it on the PTR. I don't need to, but I do need to because I need to do it at some point. I haven't done any LFR on the latest raids. I didn't even finish LFR on the last one. Because again, it's just, if I'm just going to bumble about not having to do anything for which I need gear or anything like that, I don't need to, and I can do these things later on. So I'm not feeling it for World of Warcraft. I don't want to say, oh, this is because World of Warcraft's become terrible. It's just that it was never, since vanilla, since it was all new, it was never good enough for me to occupy my time without the raiding. And so it's been proved. So that's unfortunate there. So anyway, hope you understood all that. As I say, if you've got any comments, then throw those down below as well. So this will be the official last mailbox, but it'll be replaced next Sunday with just some streaming, some gameplay streaming in the evening. And I don't know what time yet. I'll throw that out on the community tab at some point when I do know later in the week. I need to try and work out what's a good time. I mean, on Sunday for me, I don't necessarily have to do anything at any particular time. So we'll just go from there. And we'll just see how it goes. But yeah, thanks for watching anyway. And until next time, I'll see you later.